All right, y'all. Welcome to the Lower Chesapeake Bay Fishing Report, part of the Great Days Outdoors podcast network. I'm your host, Luke Barton, and each week we'll be talking with expert charter guides and subject matter experts about what's happening in our local waters. On this show, we advocate for sustainable fishing practices aimed at keeping this amazing fishery healthy and thriving for generations to come. As the fishing season adjusts to cooler temps, some target species are just heating up. So buckle up for another great episode. Let's jump in and find out what's been biting. Hooked on fishing? Then you're part of the local community that Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle cares about serving and giving back to, providing you with the right selection for each season's target species. They're your one-stop shop to gear up with the best bait, tackle, and insider tips to catch your next trophy fish. You can fuel up right out front on the water and then chat with the crew inside for hot tips on where they're biting. So swing by today. Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle, where your fishing adventures start and finish with your trophy catch on their scales. Listen up. AFTCO has a promotional gift for all Great Days Outdoors Podcast Network listeners. They're now offering a camo sunglasses cleaner cloth with any purchase of AFTCO products. For those cold, wet, or windy days, I especially enjoy my weatherproof fabric barricade jacket, as well as my Helm insulated fishing gloves. All you got to do to get your coupon code is text LCBFR to 779-345-2918. You'll get subscribed to our email list, and we'll send you the promo code via email. All right, y'all. Welcome to the Lower Chesapeake Bay Fishing Report, part of the Great Days Outdoors podcast network. I'm your host, Luke Barton, and each week we'll be talking with expert charter guides and subject matter experts about what's happening in our local waters. On this show, we advocate for sustainable fishing practices aimed at keeping this amazing fishery healthy and thriving for generations to come. As the fishing season adjusts to cooler temps, some target species are just heating up. So buckle up for another great episode. Let's jump in and find out what's been biting. All right, y'all. Well, welcome to this week's show. It's a little dreary here on this hump day, this Wednesday. A little cloudy, a little rainy, but still some fishing around and happening. We're going to hop into an offshore report with Captain Robbie Bryan aboard Reel Release. Welcome back to the show, Captain Robbie. How you doing?
Pretty good, Luke. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. You know, we've been talking a little bit lately about how the seasons are changing, the water temps are changing. We're seeing, some of the inshore speckled trout bite, fire up, but we really haven't, been out talking about what's going on offshore recently. So I want to hear a little bit about what you guys have been up to on board Reel Release.
Yeah. So it's been tough the past couple of days just with weather windows and everything like that. Typical winter time, you'll have these northeast blows and everything like that to be able to get out there. But every time when we've been going, it's tons of giant sea bass. We actually, on yesterday's trip, we had 4 sea bass over 5 pounds. And the rest of them were all super, super healthy fish. I think every fish was every bit of 2 to 4 pounds was the average size of your sea bass. So they're all nice, thick fillets that everyone's getting out of them. But yeah, there's also triggerfish still being caught out there on those wrecks, mostly on some of the, more of the inshore ones. I did see one of my buddies, he caught a couple sheepshead still on some inshore wrecks off the oceanfront too, while he was trying to go tog fishing. But everything that's about to start heating up, mostly, the sea bass is going to continue, but the inshore tog fishing, light tower, inshore wrecks, inside the triangles, that's about to heat up. And there'll be some puppy drums, some sheepshead, some triggerfish still on those wrecks as well.
Man, that's exciting to hear, and especially the class of sea bass that you were getting into. I've been out a few times, and getting one over 5 pounds is pretty rare. That's a citation, correct? Over 5 pounds.
Yeah, that was a citation. I think the longest one that I measured yesterday that we had was right at 25 and a half inches. I think 25 and a half or 26 inches. That's a pretty good size sea bass,
Yeah, it is, and especially filleting all those sea bass. I'm sure as you told me before we hit record that you were doing double duty, captain and mate, and so that means you had to do all the fishing, do all the rigging, do all the baiting, and then of course all the cleaning. So I'm sure you're grateful when it's a nicer class of fish. They're a little bit easier to clean when they're a little bit bigger, maybe over that 3 pound range, I'd imagine, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then everyone's happy because they get bigger fillets out of it. Usually we use Ziploc bag, gallon Ziploc bags to put meat in. Yesterday, but we had so much of it, we had to put it in 20-pound ice bags. That was the easiest way to be able to transport the meat.
That's an old charter trick I've seen where you run out of zips and you just go and grab the ice bags.
Yeah.
very MacGyver of you. So how far out were you guys? Were you guys just frequenting the triangles, or were you exploring some other areas?
No, so I this time of year mostly if you when it starts getting colder like this, it's better farther offshore. The fish start pushing a little bit farther out to the canyon just because the water temperature stays more consistent.
Mm,
Even though it's not really like super cold yet, but that's where you're gonna get those bigger class of fish. I think we were right at I think when I picked up the run home, we were 48 miles from Lynnhaven or from the Cape, actually from Cape Henry.
okay.
So we were out there probably around like almost to the fingers, a little bit past the triangles.
Okay, got it. So I'm looking at my my Hilton's real-time navigator, my sea temp shots, and I can see what you're talking about, that line where that temperature drops. So what types of temperatures were you seeing once you were out there past that kind of 40-mile range?
I mean, so it's pretty consistent. So when I say like the water temp like that, so it's mostly like inshore is when right now is when the water temperature is dropping. Like I've seen in past trips, like it was like 64 still in the bay, 62, and then now it's kind of dropped to like getting into like the upper 50s, lower 60s. It's mostly the bottom temp, where they're at. So if the water's like if they stay inshore on those wrecks and the water temp, we get a really cold front that drops down, it's going to shock those fish. So they start pushing out when it gets colder just to maintain that, because like at the canyon and everything out past there, it's going to mostly stay especially the canyon, it's going to warm up, with the Gulf Stream and
Hmm.
everything out. But like in between the triangles and there, it'll be like that 50 to 60-degree water up top this time of year. And then so down, where they're down at the bottom, it's going to be a more consistent temperature. It's not going to vary a lot. You know what I mean? Like if there's a hot day and a cold day and a hot day and a cold day, it's going to stay very consistent. And that's just where they winter out there.
That makes sense.
And then they move back into the springtime to the inshore, inside the triangles, triangle wrecks, and that's when they do their spawning is in May.
Got it. Okay. And so around the triangle wrecks, we're seeing depths, refresh my memory, like anywhere from like 65 to 95 feet, somewhere in there. And then out where you're looking in that 40-mile plus range, is it similar depths, or do you end up fishing a lot deeper?
No, we were fishing like I think the Dallas we fished was 100 and the deepest was like 130,
Okay.
130 foot. I think was the deepest. But
That's
usually around like this time of year and everything, when it starts to get colder, you're gonna want, and especially if you want to target like bigger, trophy sea bass, that 100-foot range is really what you want minimum. The triangles is really good, in the spring and stuff like that. But like, and then also on the inshore wrecks now, if you go, a lot of times you'll end up getting on those dog sharks,
mm.
and then you won't be able to really catch anything but the dog sharks and everything. That's the really tricky part of it.
Those dog sharks, isn't there a commercial fishery for those around here?
Yeah, they haven't. I was down there the other day talking to my buddy that nets for them. They haven't opened it up yet. There's not really a buyer yet for them, so they haven't. They're not ready for the market. So that should start though. Usually it starts in like December, January.
Okay.
You'll see a lot of the guys start dog sharking out there. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many of those things. They just take over a wreck, and you'll never be able to fish.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, are they decent table fare, or is it not something that recreational folks really target too much?
So it's not really like a thing over here, just because
Yeah.
we've got so many other fish to be able to eat. But no, they ship all the dog sharks and everything actually overseas, and that's what when you go like overseas to Europe and you have fish and chips, it's actually dog shark.
Oh, interesting. That's pretty cool when it comes right out of our waters.
Yeah, so they do taste well. It's just like there's so many other varieties of fish here that we have, and that's what I tell some people. Some people say, "Oh, bluefish is really bad," and then you'll talk to other people, that don't get out and they don't fish a lot, and they're like, "Oh, I really like bluefish," and that's like it's gotten to a point where we just get so spoiled,
Right.
with what we have. We're just used to like tunas and flounders and tog and tilefish and
Hmm.
kind of turn our nose up on those. But I mean, they're still a very edible and like really good fish to eat, especially if you're not used to anything like that.
Yeah, you make a good point. And the other night I had some rockfish that I'd caught. I caught one rockfish and one puppy drum. So when we went to cook it, I was like, you know what? Let's just try this like same seasoning, same cooking method side by side, and let's see if I can really like taste the difference. And puppy drum can definitely hang. It's not too far off. I mean, the rockfish is always going to maintain that like extra buttery, kind of sweet profile that it's kind of known for. But the puppy drum wasn't too far off. So I think you're right. We do get kind of spoiled with like some of these quote unquote bougier tasting fish, but I mean, there's plenty of other fish in the sea that are just as good to eat, if you prepare it correctly.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Is just I try to tell everybody just take care of it all varies on how you take care of your meat. As long as I'm like tell everybody before you freeze it, before you cook it, you just cut all that red meat out of it. And then I started telling all my clients, I was like, a really good thing to do is if you can, you soak it in an ice bath with because I was add a lot of salt to it and just let them soak for like an hour or two in that salt water was just super cold and it just I mean, that meat will turn, pearl white once you let it soak in that for a little bit.
That's
And it
interesting.
just
So,
firms it up and makes it a lot easier to handle. It doesn't get mushy. It just that salt really just cures it, makes it more easier to handle if you're going to freeze it or cut it up into little bites and everything. It's like when you're cleaning fish, I'm sure if you clean a fish that's been buried in ice versus cleaning a fish that's, cold, but not buried in ice. The
mhm.
meat's completely different when you're handling it.
Yeah, Alex Field used to always call it like a sort of like rigor mortis that kind of happens when not just down in ice, but if you get that like slurry going with the salt water and the
Oh
ice,
yeah.
which is that's what I prefer because you just the whole thing is just completely all parts of the fish are being contacted with water that is colder than freezing in a lot of times because I think salt water freezes like a little bit less. You have to be a little bit below 32 degrees. So you get that ice cold fish, and it's like the meat, like you're saying, it firms up. And then I like that tip about the salt bath because I can picture where it would maybe like help to pull or leach some of the oiliness out of that meat. So what you're saying with it turning pearl white before you freeze it, I imagine that just makes it taste that much better when you pull it back out to actually go cook it.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like a little brine. I started doing that for the sheep's head just to get whatever, is blood and slime out of there and just, toss it around a little bit, and then toss it around. Just put it in like a big bowl and let it sit for about an hour,
Hmm.
hour and a half. You'll be able to watch it, and drain the water if you got a lot of fish, it all varies on how much fish you're putting into the bucket. But that's what I always try to tell people to do stuff like that. Take care of it before you freeze it, because if you don't take care of it before you freeze it, then it's going to be fishy. It's going to
Yeah.
soak into that meat and it's stuck like that.
Yeah, that makes a
And
lot of
I
sense.
mean,
And
if
then
you do
it's
that, there's going to be a huge difference.
I can think back to some times like early in fishing where would freeze some meat without doing something like that, and then you go to unfreeze, thaw it, unfreeze it, thaw it, and it would smell fishy, and you'd be like, wait a second, I packed this the same day that I caught it, and you're trying to
Yeah, and it just
reconcile that.
grosses you out, and you just turn your nose up to it. It just totally ruins the experience. For me, that's the main reason why I don't like eating a lot of fish is just because I mean I deal with it every day. I just
Right.
hate that fishy smell. So
Yep.
if I go anywhere, I do not want to eat fish. Because I would know. Well, I want to know how that was handled and properly taken care of.
Oh yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
I just get one fishy taste, I'm like, nope,
Yep.
nope, 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 nope.
Game over. So I'm curious, are you a fan when you're out there, whether it's the Triangle Rex or a little bit further out, like looking at like a rubble pile or something else in that, 40-mile range? Are you with your rigs for sea bass, are you a single, diamond jig type fan, or do you prefer the dropper loops? And if so, like how many hooks do you typically do on a rig? What's your typical setup look like?
So I started making my own rigs and got a lot of them that I do, and I've kind of messed with them every now and then to be able to see, what works better and versus what doesn't. The rigs that I make right now, they've got glow squids on them. Some have glow squids, some don't. Glow beads. I mean, I usually fish. I've got multiple rigs set up, so I've got 3 and 4 hook rigs
Hmm.
for if you just for the guys that just want to go out there and bang on them and get them. And then I've got 2 hook rigs
Okay.
that I've got as well, and they are for the guys that mostly want to look for the citation fish
Hmm.
or or like an IGFA record or anything like that. That's what the 2-hook rigs are for.
Okay, that makes sense. And then, how does that, you're talking about going for a bigger citation with the 2-hook rigs. What's the kind of reasoning for that, or the difference that makes as opposed to like the 3 or 4-hook rigs?
So the 2-hook rigs, that's just like the IGFA, the ruling for those. You can't use more than those, or it doesn't count for a citation.
Got it. Okay.
It's just like, IGFA rules, and I think the same thing goes for I think it's 3 maybe for Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
For the citations. It might be 3 or 2. I'm pretty sure it's 3, but IGFA is only 2 hooks that you're allowed to use per rig.
Got it.
So like I've got a lot of guys that try to go for like, records and stuff like that, and so we just, different groups just try to vary the variations for it and make it easier for everybody to use.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, those rigs are pretty simple. I think they're probably 3 foot in length total, and you try to space them out just so the hooks don't tangle up on the drop down. I've just got them measured out to where, less tangle ups and less clusters.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely lost my share of rigs on the bottom, and so do you do the typical tie off your dropper loop and space them out a little bit, and then little lead at the bottom? Is it that simple, or do you do anything special with it?
On the rigs I've got, I'd crimp everything, so I'm using like 100-pound and 80-pound for my lines. It just makes it a little bit more abrasion resistant, especially with those bluefish out there too. Just makes it a little bit harder for them to cut through. Mm-hmm. And then, like you said, you lose so many rigs. Those wrecks, there's sharp objects on them. There's old rusty, hangs and stuff like that, rock piles or oysters, anything to cut it. So like I've used, 50-pound when I'm using like more of the inshore wrecks and everything, but out there I really like to be able to use like that 80 to 100-pound. It just covers everything. Mm-hmm. And you will land a lot more fish, especially because you never know what you're going to hook down there. I think yesterday we caught 2 angel sharks too, which are pretty cool looking. Caught 2 of those out there. That was different. We did catch a flounder in 130 foot.
Oh, wow.
And there were still some bluefish out there too as well. And then I think we did have like a 5-foot shark. But all that stuff, was landed versus like, if you use 50-pound, you never know if you would have been able to land those fish versus, the 80. It just makes it a little bit more secured into landing something versus, tossing it up. Right. Definitely don't want to go all the way out there and half-ass it. You know, if you're going out there, you want to do everything as proper as you can so you can have a better catch, and a better day out there.
Right. So you wouldn't say sea bass they're not real leader shy then?
No, they're not. They're not at all. I would say it's mostly, it's like croaker fishing, It's just, I like that I will notice I have bigger catches on the ones with squids that I put on there. Mm-hmm. But then I've had, pretty good sized catches on ones with just regular hooks. It's just all like a presentation thing. As long as you have fresh bait, that's the main thing. Fresh bait. I can't drill that into, my clients' heads as much as I want to, but that is the main thing. Fresh bait. You drop it down there and you're not getting a bite, but John or Tim next to you is hooked up.
He's got fresh bait.
Because even though you still have bait on there, you still have bait. It's probably washed out. I was like, every 2 or 3 drops, throw the bait over, put a new bait on. We've got plenty of bait. That's the main thing. Just freshen it up every time.
Got it.
You want it as stinky and nasty as possible.
Man, I had to look up a picture of what that angel shark was. That is a cool looking animal, man. I mean, it almost looks like somewhere between like a giant flounder, halibut, a stingray, and a shark. That's a really cool looking shark. So those that are listening, go Google them.
I thought it was a giant flounder one, because you can see so far down there. And when you're looking down and you see that brown and then it rolls in that pearl white belly, I'm like, oh my God, that's a giant flounder, because we had just caught a flounder right before that. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, no, angel shark.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Now, before we wrap up, I want to just get a little bit of a teaser, for those that are, hearing your voice for the first time, talking about what you guys do aboard Reel Release. Tell us briefly about the boat that you're running, and I also want to just get a quick teaser about what you think is going to be coming up with these bluefin tuna.
Yeah. So we run a 30-foot pilot house, Atlantic. It's got a giant cobia tower on it. I think we're 18 foot off the water, or 19 with that tower. With the cabin too, especially with the wintertime coming up, a lot nicer. You can get outside the elements. You know, you're not so cold. We'll have a little space heater here once when we start running our rockfish trips in December up there at Cape Charles. And, you know, plenty of room for 6 people, 5 people, whatever group you got. We've taken, you know, we'll take it all and accommodate everybody. But yeah, with the bluefins, I mean, they're here. That's going to be the next main thing. That's going to be, you're going to see that probably take off. I bet you the 2 days or the day after Thanksgiving, you'll start seeing them caught. You'll start seeing people posting pictures of them. That's usually the same time that they always show up every year. I talked to some guys out of Chincoteague right now on the Eastern Shore that are running, you know, fish pots out, and they're seeing them rolling all up there. They're seeing some around like the fingers and stuff like that. You know, an occasional one rolls or blows up out there, but mostly it's going to be, you know, in the next week, you're going to see them all off the, you know, Fisherman's Island, Light Tower, Cape Henry, Sandbridge, in those areas where we, you know, where everybody was fishing for them last year.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's anything like what we have in Ocean City right now, it's going to be insane, because those guys have been just, I mean, whacking them 6 miles outside the inlet, 6 to 10 miles outside the inlet. For the last 2 to 3 weeks, they have been catching the mess out of bluefins up there. But yeah, hopefully that, if that comes down here, it's going to be game on, and hopefully we can get some people out there, you know, that want to try to land these giant things. I know I got up with some of the guys with Shimano. I talked to them, and I think they're going to come down, and we're going to try to do like a little jigging thing for them. We want to go out there and try to sight cast and jig for these bluefins when they show up. So I really hope they show up here soon so we can get those guys out there, and so I can try to do it. I've never jigged for a bluefin. I've never jigged for a tuna, so I think it would be pretty interesting to jig for those, especially some of those giants out there.
Absolutely. And folks that want to get up with you and book a trip, you know, for any of the above that we've talked about, what's going to be the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, so the best way to reach out to me is going to be check out my website, or message me on Facebook or Instagram, and we'll get you out there and try to get a date lined up for you guys. I know that the next main thing that people are going to start booking is probably going to be the rockfish. So we're running those trips right now we'll be booking those from December 15th till, you know, the end of January. It all depends on, you know, the bait situation and how cold the water gets. But anywhere between December 15th and January 15th is usually game on for this trophy rockfish. And I really hope that it was just like last year. I mean, we had some days where we caught over 20 rockfish by noon, you know, all, you know, 40 to 50 pounds. I mean, it was just insane.
That's amazing.
And it is super fun and something to do on light tackle action, you know, in the dead of winter around here.
Yeah. Well, I think folks that are listening, if they're interested in doing any sort of fishing between now, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, hopping aboard Reel Release with Captain Robbie is going to give you a great opportunity to get out there. So, Captain Robbie, thanks so much for joining us today and tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's going to wrap up a great report about what's going on offshore near the wrecks and what's upcoming with the bluefin. Y'all stick around for a word from our sponsors, making this great show free for you each week, and we'll be back with you soon. Hilton's Offshore Charts. The days of heading out and blindly looking for good fishing areas are pretty much over. Don't waste time and money on fuel searching for fish. You need the most recent, highest resolution images to not only know where to go, but where not to go. The knowledge provided by today's technology is critical when planning an offshore fishing trip. So make the choice that professional captains all over the East Coast make and choose Hilton's Real-Time Navigator. The easy-to-use interface and excellent customer service will have you on the fish every time you go. Check them out at hiltonsoffshore.com. That's hiltonsoffshore.com. Sam Rust Seafood, your locally trusted source for premium wholesale seafood. Servicing customers from Hampton Roads down through the Outer Banks, Richmond, and surrounding areas, including Fredericksburg, Charlottesville, and Lynchburg, for over 80 years. Committed to the highest standards in the industry, Sam Rust distributes the best of the ocean directly to your restaurant, hotel, or grocery store on time and at a great price. Visit samrust.com to discover how quality, tradition, and sustainability come together. So don't cuss, call Sam Rust. All right, guys. Show's all about whether it's good, bad, or ugly. So here comes something that's probably going to be falling into that ugly category. Not the person we're talking to, but the fishing. So welcome back to the show, Captain Austin Hain with Fineo Sport Fishing. How you been, Cap?
Good man, what's going on?
Man, it's just kind of that like weird tweener season where it's like, do we go fishing in the bay? Do we go inshore? Do we try to go offshore? What have you been up to, if anything? I mean, I know y'all's specialty is somewhat, past with the cobia season, but I know you do a little bit of everything. So have you done any exploring? Anything new?
Yeah, I mean, I tried the bay the other day. I figured it wasn't going to be hot and heavy, and sure enough, it wasn't. The river fishing, I did some river fishing probably 2, 3 weeks ago, and I did that quite a bit, and it was good. The trout, I mean, we call trout and drum, all that stuff, but the trout, I mean, even the trout this year have been way smaller than years past. You catch a bunch,
Yeah.
but they're 12 to like 18 inches is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And all that. But I do have one good thing
Yeah.
is the drum bite in the river was probably the best I've ever seen. You could go catch, I mean, I had some docks you could throw a crab on and catch, I don't know, a 26 to low 30-inch class drum in 30 seconds.
Oh, that's fun.
Drum were nice, but the trout I love my trout.
Yeah.
I catch thousands of drum in the summertime, so they're cool, but I love just a little 1K with 8-pound braid and catch, 25-inch trout. That makes me happy. But the trout bite has really let me down this year. Catch a bunch, but they're
Yeah.
all small. So
And you said the river. Which river have you been exploring in for the trout?
I've fished all of them. I actually went to the best one I've had the most luck in is definitely the Lafayette River
Mm-hmm.
for the drum and the trout. I did one other thing I did pretty decently on a couple weeks ago was flounder, and that was in Lynnhaven. Caught
Okay.
a lot of flounder. Nothing big.
Yeah.
But if you could make it through the croakers eating your gulp, you catch, 15, 16-inch flounders, lots of those around. And I haven't fished the Elizabeth River. That's usually where I would start going this time of year, when it gets
Yeah.
cold. I hear there's actually been a decent bite in the Elizabeth for nicer trout. I just haven't done that yet this year.
Yeah. The Lafayette, looking on a map, it's just a little bit closer to the mouth of that entrance to the bay, coming across the HRBT. And I remember fishing in that river back in the day. It's definitely a little bit cleaner looking water than the tannins of the south part of the Elizabeth. Do you find that makes a difference in terms of like how you're approaching, going for those fish, like lure wise, or is it still to use the same lures regardless of the watercolor?
I still use the same lures.
Yeah.
Only lure color that makes a difference to me is I throw dark colors at night and bright colors during the day. But most of my trout fishing, I'd say 99% of them, that is all nighttime. So I regardless if the water's brown as can be or even red like the Elizabeth sometimes or crystal clear, I throw a black or a purple.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah. I remember several years ago, and this is one of the things that I admire about you as a fisherman and a guide. Obviously it's fun to go out there and get hooked on giant cobia or a giant drum. Like that is certainly a rush, or a giant bluefin tuna. But I remember several years ago, I booked a charter with you to go speckled trout fishing. And I'm thinking in my head, like, man, I guess it's cool that he does these speckled trout trips, even though, like, I'm sure that doesn't get him excited at all. And I'll never forget, we got to the spot and you're like, all right, here it is. And like that first speckled trout you swung on, like, you were like a kid at Christmas, man. You were screaming and excited. I'm like, oh, he still gets fired up for these speckled trout. This is awesome. My man's a purist.
Yeah, no, man, the speckled trout, I don't know what it is about them. And like you said, it's so weird. I love even in Florida, it's like Goliath, sharks,
Yeah.
cobia, drum, bluefin tuna. And then I don't know what it is about a speckled trout. It gets me going. I think it's because you're catching them on such light gear. I'm throwing eight
Yeah.
pound, 15-pound fluorocarbon, and it's such a finesse, like twitch kind of
Yeah.
very, very light. It's just, I think it's because it's so opposite of what I do 95% of my year,
Yeah, it's like putting down the hammer and picking up the scalpel. It's so intricate, and you're just kind of like trying to dial in and figure it out and trick them into that bite. And speckled trout do have that great little like explosive thump, that like you just swing and there they are. It's fun.
You set the hook and they don't take drag, but you're still excited because that's so fun. They come up and they thrash their head and that's it. If they take drag, it's a good trout, like because they usually don't take drag. If you hook one and it takes drag, it's a good trout. So
Oh yeah, that's going to be that 25 plus incher that you're excited to see. But you're right about the dinks. I'm currently competing in the Long Bay Point Troutzilla, and I've been out a few times. And finally, I just said, you know what, the heck with it. I'm just going to enter this fish that I've got. It's the largest. I caught probably 20 of them, and the biggest one was 13 inches. So I'm like, well, that's the one I'm going to take a picture of and submit. It's not going to win anything, but at least we can say we caught one.
yeah, I mean it's still fun because it's action packed. Like I said, you're catching. You can catch them like at least you're gonna have a bite like every other cast. It's just the big ones are just not here. I just think it's been too warm. Maybe I don't know. I don't know.
It has been a little bit unseasonably warm, but I want to talk about the ugly. So I know you weren't too thrilled about a recent trip where what were you targeting and what was the outcome?
Well, I haven't been here in 4 years. I'm usually in Florida in the wintertime. But this year I stayed around because I'm hoping these bluefin will show up, and I want to try for stripers and tautog and all that good stuff. So had a nice day, and it's right about that time, usually mid-November and Thanksgiving, right in that time frame we start really used to really do good on the stripers. I mean, catch 20, 30, 40, 50 a night. Anywhere a big one would be 45 inches all the way down to like 22, 23 inches. So I always give it a try, and that's what I wanted to go was do stripers. And I tried tautog because it was just a nice day, and we're like, let's get out a little early and try that. So got some blue crabs, got some female blue crabs, went out there, started with the tog. We fished the pylons out there first, and the sea bass were ruthless. I mean, you could not keep your bait if you were getting bites on the way down. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're dropping a 6-ounce sinker, and on the way down, you don't even have time to close your reel because the sea bass have pecked your bait all the way down. But if you could make it through the sea bass and you were die hard enough to keep changing your bait, there was a good amount of tog out there. It's just if you could make it through the sea bass. So
That's crazy.
Most of our togs actually came from the rocks because the pylons just had too many sea bass. The rocks had way less, but it was still a sea bass problem. But we got some togs, nothing big, 20 inches was a big one, but lots of keepers, 16, 17, 18. They're a good time. They fight hard. They taste good. We let them all go. I was just kind of seeing what was out there. So we did that till sunset, and then switched over to stripers.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of expected it not to be good because it's been about 10 years since it's been good. But to try. And we tried topwaters at sunset. Not even a bluefish swirl, just completely dead. And I said, here we freaking go. It's going to be one. And I tried a couple different plugs, and this is when I thought actually we were going to be onto something. So I was throwing like subsurface plugs like bombers and yozuris, they swim like 6 inches down. I said, let me try something that swims deep. So I switched over to a 5-inch hoagie, which is like a beefed up storm shad kind of deal. Mm-hmm. And my cast, I hook up. I'm like, that's a fucking good fish. And I'm like, okay, cool. So they're just deep. So I fight this fish, and it was a legit like 10-minute fight. I couldn't believe it. So I'm like, this is good fish. And get him in. It was a 36-inch fat striper. I'm like, okay, they're here. I'm like, this is a fucking good fish. I mean, 36-inch striper.
Oh yeah,
solid. And
And what did that big fish? What were you using for your rod and reel and your lure again?
I was using a 4,500 spin fisher with 30 braid and a 7.6 medium heavy magic tail rod.
Okay, so basically a cobia setup, but with back down the braid to 30 and a little bit lighter leader.
Yep, I was throwing 40-pound fluorocarbon and to a hoagie, and it's like I think it was a 4-inch black hoagie. And this was when it wasn't sunset at this point. And so second cast, caught that fish, and I just knew we were going to be onto something. I'm like, all right, cool, they're sitting deep. And so keep casting. 30 minutes goes by, nothing there. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm like, let me go try maybe the bridge lights. Because what I used to do with my charters when we had a ton of stripers around here was I would actually get in the tower, and, if it was the outgoing tide, they'd set up on the bayside light line. You'd see them kind of just sitting there in the shadow, waiting for cross the light. And so I would drive on the tower. I'd see them, and I'd tell my customers, hey, they're, off the bow or to the right a little bit or whatever the case. We'd sight cast them. So I checked, I don't know, a mile of light lines, plenty of birds, plenty of small bluefish. Did not see the first striper in any of the lights. Nothing. Man. And you couldn't blind cast either of the lights because the bluefish were so thick. And they weren't even like the good bluefish, like,
The big
5 pounds. These were like quarter pound, just enough to eat off of anything you threw kind of deal.
Yeah.
So then I went back to the rocks and casted on the second island for probably another 30 minutes. Caught another one, but he was probably 20 inches. And I looked at Zay and I said, it's a nice night, but I'm going in. I said, I ain't doing this all night.
Yeah, that's not fun to stay out there and just beat your head against the wall.
Well, it's just so different than what it used to be. It's just, when you've seen it good and you know how it should be, it's always it's like, imagine going cobia fishing at the Eastern Shore late June and seeing one cobia all day. It's like, what am I doing out here?
It would break your spirit almost, because like, in your gut, in your heart, it should be like on fire and it should be great, and then it's just not, and you're like,
I mean, we had a full moon, ripping out, going tide, mid-November, 58-degree water temperature, clean water, everything was set up, and still no stripers. Crazy how that worked.
Yeah. You had the whole party set up and just no guests showed. That sucks. Well, I mean, that's part of, that's the ugly side of fishing. Sometimes it just, all the conditions are right and nothing is there for you. So, what'd you guys end up doing? Just call it a night and pack it up?
Call it a night. Like I said, not skunked. We got some togs. Tog fishing was decent. But the stripers, that's where my passion is in the wintertime. I love striper fishing. Anything big that's going to eat a lure, get me involved with that. But
yeah,
I might try it one more time, like late December or something, when it's really cold out.
Yeah.
November, it's not worth the gas, the time, the money, all that to go out there and catch a fish maybe.
Yeah. Something tells me if you mentioned, if it's big and it eats a lure, you're in. How do you feel about, slow troll, bump troll, and eels for striper?
Hate it. I have had, phenomenal days doing it. I've done it.
It's slow.
And I've best doing it, and I have taken plenty of customers to do it, but it's torturous because you put these eels back there, and back in the this is all back in the day, like 2012, 2013, when average day over there, you catch like 10 and have 20 bites. It was still like, it's just, I hate watching for a rod to bend. I like action and, casting lures or constantly searching for a fish or jigging.
Yeah.
Put the bait back there, wait for the rod to bend over with a circle hook, and you're like, there it is, just crank, guys. It's just like, okay, cool, we caught a fish. But I would do it absolutely if it was good again. But even over the past years, it ain't been worth it, really.
Yeah, that's just a lot of slow time, going very slowly, doing a whole lot of just staring at the water, which, some people enjoy that. They find that relaxing, and to them, my hat's off to you. I think those of us that have any sort of, ADD or ADHD, it's just like, that feels like torture to us. We'd rather be casting at nothing than to be, staring at the water. So
old too. And if you're not staying active with touching a rod or jigging or casting, you're just freezing.
Yep. Even casting a rod can be enough just to keep your blood circulating, to keep you alive.
You take that lure and you're like, okay, I didn't get a bite here. Let me cast a little bit left, even though you're not going to get a bite. Let me try left even more. All right, let me try this. Let me let it sink. The eel, you just sit there and you're like, is that rod going to bend in the next hour? Let's see.
Yeah. And it's funny about the bluefish, around the poles and the sea bass, kind of blocking you from those tautags. It kind of took me back to like late summer when we were having some of those issues around the pilings with the bluefish, and you couldn't even, you'd see a cobia right there and you'd try to cast to it, and the bluefish would just annihilate your bait before it even got a chance to get to the cobias. And it was like, man, how do you deal with this? But you, as a Florida fisherman, all things being equal, I guess we're great. We should be grateful that we have that problem instead of a shark problem.
Yes. It would be really bad if we had sharks here. I will take bluefish, sea bass, whatever, you name it. Them sharks are bad news. They'll ruin your entire. I mean, they'll ruin everything. And not only do they eat your catch, like they ruin your gear. They're a terrible creature. Terrible.
Yeah. So this is, forward tracking into next year. I don't know if you saw some of the results of the recent Finfish Committee meeting and what the proposed solution for the future for Kobe is, but it looks like we're going to end up with this kind of new regulation of a minimum 43-inch, two bag limit. The 1/50 is kind of going to go away. Just curious, what your thoughts are on that, as somebody who's been fishing for these things a long, long time, and you've seen all the different changes throughout the years. What's your opinion on some of these changes that are going to be coming up?
I mean, there's no denying there's a lot more boats doing it. So a lot more fish are getting killed. So I honestly don't really have that much of an issue with it. 43 inches is that's a good fish, but I don't think it's going to be that hard to achieve if we had a year like last year. The year before we had struggle days, but our fishery was healthy. It was good. Our bay was alive last year. Our average cobia was honestly probably 43 inches to 45. We had a lot of non-measuring fish. Okay, that's definitely a 43, 44, 45-inch fish.
Right.
So, the year past, it was a lot of 39s. It's 40 and a half. So if we have a year like last year, I don't think it's really going to hurt us too much with those regulations. And I don't want to get hate for it, but Florida regulates their fish insanity, and they have some insane fishing there.
Mm-hmm.
So if it helps fishery, I'm good with it.
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit of sacrifice and a little bit of containment, so to speak, for a period of time, kind of ensures that the fishery is healthy and available for us into the future. And the whole, eliminating the 1/50 inches, rule, I'm sure that's going to create some interesting, different viewpoints. To kind of try to simplify it, my thoughts are just, kind of like, trout release over 20, just to kind of keep that mentality of release over 50, because that 48 to 54-inch class fish is going to be that healthy, fertile breeder, that can help to continue the population. So just because we could kill two giants doesn't mean we have to.
Yeah. That was, I don't do it too often, honestly. If I get one of those really hydrated females, you know what I'm talking about, like the butter.
Yeah.
I do ask my clients, I'm like, hey guys, this thing's holding a lot of eggs, about to reproduce any day now, or even that day. I was like, if y'all want to let this go, you're going to be doing a good cause. But I understand if you don't, it's your choice.
Yeah.
Back in the day when we could kill one per person, we were killing 6 cobias, 7 cobias a day. I would always be sure, even if it was a small 60-pound fish, I would always just offer to them, hey guys, this is a 70-pound cobia. You're going to get, we already killed 5. Do you really want to kill this 70-pounder? So yeah, I do agree with, especially if it's a good day of fishing, you're catching a bunch.
Yeah.
You've seen the bigger fish because they're not around like they used to be. And I don't care who tells me otherwise, they are not around like they used to be. Last year was a good year for like 60-pound class. But again, no, I didn't see very many 70s, 80s, nothing like that. 90s especially. So
yeah, I think I only saw one quote unquote like true giant. And it's interesting too. So I sent this information to you back in 2023, and it was the comparison of citation data for cobias for 2015 through 2022. And so it was interesting to look at in 2015 for weight citations, there was 167 total weight citations registered, with nearly 30 of those being over 70 pounds, and the biggest was 90 pounds. That was back in 2015. And then we fast forward to year end 2022, there was only 63 weight citations and only 4 over 70 pounds. So that to me is, again, this is all subjective. This is just opinion. But those are some huge differences in the total number of weight citations and the total number of large citations over 70 pounds. I mean, it's like 60% less weight citations and like 85% less over 70 pounds.
Yeah. I would say that the cobia population after this past year is unhealthy. That's what a lot of people are taking from it. It's just, there's just the bigger class of fish is just, I don't know if they just don't eat now, or I don't know. They don't come around too often anymore. A 60-pound fish nowadays is, a fish of a week.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you look at the tournament results. You don't see a lot of huge fish winning the tournaments. You catch a 55-pound fish, and you pretty much know you're in the money. Whereas back in the day, you catch a 55-pound fish, and you're like, man, maybe I'll get sixth place, maybe I'll get seventh place. It wasn't gonna go take the bag home, so to speak.
It was wild to not know how good we had it back then. We had days where I remember one day where we went to the ocean front and we caught. I mean, I don't know how we caught, but we boxed six, and our smallest one was 58 pounds, and our biggest was 78 pounds or something like that. I mean, that was just like, oh, and by the way, all on bucktails too. It's just how that changed and how aggressively they eat, and it's got to be boat pressure or I don't know. I don't know. It's strange. It's just weird how everything changes. Like, talk about the stripers. Like, where do they go? Are they dead? Are they
Right.
else? Do they not go to the bay? Who knows?
I think we underestimate or could potentially underestimate just the way the like environmental things impact fish. Boat pressure is one that we always kind of like say it, but it's like, do we really believe it? And I'll say from my opinion, this summer when you were with me the day that we went out on the click through. I can't remember if you were with me the day that we saw the pods of rays. I don't think you were with me that day, but it was awful conditions again, just like the day that we went, and we were ocean side of the third and fourth island, and it was just mats of rays, and every single ray mat had fish on it. Whereas like 2 days prior, we were fishing in the same area, none of that was visible. Difference of like being 40, 50 boats around or zero boats around. It's like
Yeah.
that to me was a great test, if you will, if that sort of theory about boat pressure is true. From my perception, definitely true because how could that change that much in 2 days where all of a sudden everything's up on the surface? Well, there's not,
The 100% boat pressure, 100,000%. I'm out there, 7 days a week, and you got to think like a ray mat. You're talking probably not even like a mega ray mat. You're talking
no.
like those rays, like 50 rays or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
So if two guys run over that ray mat before you and there was only five cobias in it, then they're either going to be ran over or casted at or hooked or whatever the case. Now, back in the day when there was only a couple boats out there, everybody would find their own ray mat, or you'd find all those ray mats by yourself before who knows who else is out there.
Right.
And how many times do you a cobia gets hit by just your whitewash and he's sick, he acts spooky, or he changes directions, or he does all that weird stuff, just the whitewash from your boat.
Yep.
And so you factor in just people not even cobia fishing, just driving out into the bay, how many whitewashes are hitting these fish and disturbing them.
Yep.
Back then, 2015 and before, I'd say 2016 and before, there was barely anybody doing it. You could go off the fourth island and see one boat maybe like 20 miles away. Like, you wouldn't even have to worry about going to the bridge to find fish or wherever. Or like, oh, I got to beat these people here, or has somebody already checked this buoy, or whatever the case. So,
yeah. Well, it's definitely good to just, at least have these conversations and be mindful of it, going into 25, whatever the regulations are. I think it's just important for us, especially the recreational guys, our majority of our listeners, to just think about it from a stewardship perspective. And, if we don't need it, let's not take it. Because it's going to just help with the longevity of the health of the species. So thanks for that ugly report about your striper exploration, man. Sorry to hear it didn't pan out the way you're expecting.
I kind of expected it, but someone's got to go out there and do it. I'll tell you what, I was the only boat out there.
Hey, well, now we just disproved ourselves. There was zero boat pressure and zero fish. What the heck?
Well, they've been going for, I don't even know, the last good year we had on stripers, I don't know. 2012 good, but I think they really, really completely, I was over. It was like 2016. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely some good weather coming up, with, things cooling down and hopefully seeing those speckled trout, ramp up a little bit. You mentioned the tautogs, even some flounder that you're catching in the rivers. Folks want to get up with you and go do something, go on an exploration for stripers or anything in between. What's the best way they can contact you and get booked on ugly charters? Just kidding. Fineo charters.
That's one thing I'm pretty good at with my charters is I'll just tell you straight up, we ain't going if it sucks. So
yeah, brutal honesty goes a long way.
Unless the stripers show up, like I said, I might try it one more time when it gets really cold, or if those bluefins show up, I'm definitely going to go hit those. But if it sucks, I'm definitely just not going. So
yeah. No doubt about that. But if folks want to get out there and go get skunked with you, what's the best way they can contact you?
Well, you can always just shoot me a message on Instagram. That's Instagram at Fineo Sport Fishing. Or you could give me a call or shoot me a text at 757-530-4009.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for that report and a little bit of advice about the Kobe fishery going in 25. Appreciate the conversation, man.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. All right, y'all stick around for a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with you here real shortly. It's time we talked about catching some serious savings. Imagine harnessing the power of the sun to cut your energy bills and having a roof that's built to last. Convert Solar and Roofing specializes in top-notch solar installations and durable roofing solutions that stand up to the toughest elements. Their solar panels are designed to maximize efficiency, and their roofs are built with premium materials to ensure long-lasting protection. Whether you're out on the water or at home, their expert team ensures you're covered. As fellow anglers in the Lower Chesapeake Bay, the team at Convert Solar and Roofing cares about both sustainable living and sustainable fishing. So reel in those savings today and visit www.convert-solar.com or call 757-44-SOLAR. Make your energy and roof as reliable as your favorite fishing lure. Call Convert Solar and Roofing today. Tired of battling salt corrosion on your boat, trailer, and reels? Meet Salt's Gone, your ultimate solution. This powerful, instantly acting chelating agent tackles salt and brine with ease, featuring corrosion inhibitors to protect against future damage and surfactants for a thorough clean. Salt's Gone is pH neutral, making it safe for all boat materials: metal, glass, paint, vinyl wraps, and more. Highly concentrated, just 1 gallon creates 100 gallons of ready-to-use solution. Apply it with or without running water. It's perfect for any situation. Use code GREATDAYS10 to save 10% at saltsgone.com. Or if you need faster delivery, use Amazon or your favorite retailer. All right, guys. Well, it's time to dive into a little bit of inshore action. And when it comes to inshore action, I don't think there's anybody that we've talked to that we have more fun chatting with, whether it's talking about ice cream, this, out of the other. But we're visiting with Captain C.L. Marshall again from up there at Tangier Sound Charters. How are we doing, Captain Marshall?
Man, we're doing great, man. Just coming off the water on a busman's holiday with Captain Alan Ring. We've been up in the Chop Tank River catching rockfish, and I really enjoyed it because I didn't have to do a whole lot. I just, ate a big sub and caught a bunch of fish, and I didn't have to do it with a trolling motor or nothing. I was with Captain Ring. What do you say, Alan?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good. How are you, Captain Allen? That is a treat to get to just go play mate for the day.
Oh yeah, just hang out. Yep. We had a relaxing day catching rockfish.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the pressure was off today, and we got back into the dock. We ran into Captain Brandon Wingett, who I hadn't never actually met, but we talked many times on the phone and on the radio, and it was kind of nice to put a face to that name. And in the 15 minutes you were waiting for me to sign on, that's what we were doing. I was chatting with him, and
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, it's good, man. It's really neat to be able to communicate, share information, and work together. And that's kind of the neat thing about this clique of guides that we have up here.
Yeah.
Matt from Seahawk, Brandon, Cole Langley from across the bay, great shoot. Even Pete Dahlberg. And we all seem to work together a little bit, and it's kind of cool.
That's awesome. And just to get located for those that are tuning in listening, so the Chop Tank River, if we picture the Chesapeake Bay, we just kind of keep going north and we cross over into Maryland. And then we go a little bit further just above the Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge. And that next river is going to be the Chop Tank, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And last year rock fishing in the Chop Tank was absolutely amazing. Alan spent more time up here than I did, but 40, 50 fish days were the norm.
Oh yeah, it was good. Under a lot of times you're finding birds. You're looking for the birds, and they're going to show you where the fish are, and then you're just going to find breaking fish and just stay with them. And once they go down, you go find another.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that sounds like a blast.
Casting jigs and bucktails, it is a lot of fun.
It ain't for everybody, Luke. It ain't for everybody.
What's now you're talking about what size rockfish?
These fish that we're catching up here right now are between 19 and 27 inches. We did have some shorts today.
Yeah, there were some small ones, but that was good to see them.
Yeah, it's good to see the shorts. And what we're doing, we're using relatively light tackle. rods rated for quarter ounce, stuff like that. We're throwing quarter ounce jig heads with plastic swim baits. Today the fish were real tight to the bottom. And what we're doing, we're casting those out, and just kind of slowly jigging it back, snap jigging it off the bottom and letting it fall back down.
Okay.
And most of the fish are on the bottom that we find today. So what we did, we made a quick executive decision, and we changed our lure selection kind of quickly, and went from that, and we tied on some metal jigs. The crippled herrings is what I like, and Alan was using some kind of something else.
Yeah, specialty baits made by Mr. George over across the bay there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
that was after we ate our sub.
That was after we ate sub, yeah. And we were using those metal jigs because the fish were tight to the bottom, and pulling them up about 6-8 inches and letting them flutter back down, and all the strikes were on the fall, and it was fun. I gotta tell you, the fish aren't big, but the tackle is rated for the fish. They right now we had 55 degree, 56 degree water today.
Okay.
And it was fun. It's just fun. The rod stays bent. There's plenty of action. It's just a gas. So we were doing that. Now, as the season goes on, Luke, what'll happen? We'll get some of those fish moving up the bay. Some of the larger fish will follow the same pattern. Channel edges, we'll find them congregated on channel edges, schooled there. And naturally, the birds, right now, it's mainly gulls. The brine gulls are your friends, and the small white Arctic terns are liars.
Got it.
You'll see the Arctic terns diving on stuff on the water, and they will lie to you every time. They are not fish finders. But the big brine birds and the gannets, they're in it to eat. So that usually works out pretty well. Now, the gannets will start showing up with the larger fish. When, Alan? They should be
moving in any time.
Yeah.
This year's a little bit different. Things seem to be a little bit later than usual.
Things are a little bit later. So we're thinking we see the rock fishing up here getting better every day.
Yeah.
We see that happening, and we're by the end of next week, we're looking for a really strong December. It used to be Rocktober, now it's Rockcember.
Would you say that's kind of in relationship to the first, the kind of end of October and the first couple weeks of November seem to be unseasonably warm this year?
Yeah. Water temps about 8 degrees higher than it should be, than it was the same week last year. I keep pretty good notes. Last year we were on channel edges in the bay proper, jigging rockfish and casting for birds, but that was in the bay. We're up these creeks and rivers right now. But I tell you, what's been interesting since I got in, my phone's been blowing up about this redfish bite that's still happening at home.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And I think I've got Alan talked into cutting out of work a little bit early tomorrow from Seahawk, and maybe going over to take a look-see with me.
That's awesome. Well, I remember the last time we were, talking to you guys, you were at the shop there at Seahawk. What's new over at the store this time of year?
So we just got a brand new line of Fenwick rods and Fenwick HMGs and Fenwick Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're brand new. Those are awesome rods. Good warranty on them. They've got good guides. They're just awesome rods. So brand new for this year. They just come in.
One of the things that I've switched to is I've switched to the Tsunami Carbon Shield. They seem to be, there's a couple different, like most rods, there's a couple different weights of it. The Carbon Shield's a 7-foot Tsunami rod. It seems to be relatively durable.
Mm-hmm.
We're able to cast small jigs with it, but yet it's got enough backbone to it where when you hook a big red or a big rockfish like we plan to do in a couple weeks up here, it's got enough backbone to handle that down and dirty fight. They're the rods I've used them. How long have I had them, Alan? Month?
Well, about I guess 4 or 5 weeks. They're not completely CL tested yet, but working on it.
I haven't broke one yet, so but
the true test.
Yeah.
Can CL break it?
Yeah, those are strong rods, and they're light.
Very light.
Very cool.
Because when I do a lot of popping cork fishing, and I plan on doing that tomorrow. And so having a little bit lighter rod, having one that's got some backbone and kind of a fast tip to it,
mm-hmm.
you can cast it longer. I mean, it'll wear you out casting them things for about an hour.
And you mentioned that you guys were throwing, pretty light tackle, quarter ounce jig heads and whatnot, and you were kind of matching the class of the fish that you were going after. I mean, but from my limited experience, striped bass can put up a pretty good fight. So when it comes to your actual reel selection that you're throwing on those rods, what are you guys using for those?
Well, I use the Penn Battle threes. The 2500s is what we had everything spooled up with today.
Okay.
I've got some 3000s on those same Tsunami carbon steel rods, and that's the same setup, Luke, that I was using sight casting those reds, 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's the same setup that I'm going to use tomorrow to do it again, with any luck at all.
And in terms of your leader material, going
Yeah.
from a striped bass and red drum back and forth, do you change it up at all, or do you use something similar?
No, absolutely. I change leader materials daily.
Hmm.
I change my leaders every day. I use an FG knot going from the braid to the fluorocarbon. Today we were throwing a 15-pound leader material fluoro. I think it's a Yozuri brand that we're using, and for the red drum I go to 30.
Okay. Yeah, they have a little bit of a stronger pull, and they can also, jump in size all of a sudden, whereas those striped bass, like you were saying, they were all kind of in that
Yep.
slot range. And when you're fishing up in Maryland, in contrast to Virginia, are the harvest limits the same, or do they differ from Maryland to Virginia?
With rockfish, they're the same, thankfully.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer that the Chesapeake Bay, that the rockfish is a bay-wide fish,
Hmm.
and I'm really happy that Virginia's regulations are the same as Maryland. It
Okay.
provides uniformity there. I would hope that Virginia would take a look at their red drum regulations and kind of. I think three's a lot for the puppy drum.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because last week we had a really nice conversation with Chris Ludford, who is on the board of the Finfish Committee, and I went and attended one of it was actually my first VMRC commission meeting where they met with the Finfish Committee and reviewed all the legislation or commission changes that were proposed by ASMFC, and specifically they talked through striped bass, cobia, and blue catfish. So it was just kind of a really educational and informative time to understand what goes into some of that decision making in regards to harvest targets, estimated harvest, and what percentage of, decrease might need to be made for a given species in coming years in order to make sure that we continue to preserve it. And, I agree with you. It's, whether it's puppy drum, striped bass, cobia, we, the recreational fishermen, I'm learning, make up the larger dent, so to speak, in what is taken, or the removals as they call it. So if we've got the ability to go out there several times a month and harvest, we don't need to necessarily be taking max limits every single time, unless you're going to tell me that you've got 14 children and you're feeding them puppy drum 6 days a week.
Al and I were talking today as we were out fishing, and just really just having a great day. We were talking about how the charter industry has changed, and so many of my customers and so many of his customers, they aren't necessarily interested in even keeping a fish.
Mm,
The picture and let him go, and they're happy with that. Now
that's cool.
yeah, it is cool. And there are some people that that want to keep a fish or two, and there are some people want to a box full of meat, and I get that. I
Yeah.
get all perspectives of it, and I know that this isn't a program where we want to talk regulations and get down and dirty and but I welcome that conversation.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that both Virginia and Maryland need to take a look at is this cobia thing. And if you think it can't go bad, talk to somebody from Destin, Florida.
Yeah, and we have Captain Matt Maldwin from the click-through boat, and I think the key takeaway that we've all kind of come to the same conclusion of is we just need to take personal responsibility on, especially us recreational guys. We need to take personal responsibility on every single trip we take to not only be very careful in the resuscitation and release of every fish that we do catch and net, but to also really just consider removals being dramatically reduced, especially some of those larger fish, those healthy breeders in that 47, 48 to 54-inch range. We really just need to let those bigger ones go. I think we're going to start trying to coin the phrase, release over 50, especially considering that coming into 2025, it looks like the regulations that are going to be proposed and potentially approved are going to be still a 2 fish bag, increasing the minimum from 40 to 43 inches, and then that's it. There's not the only 1/50 inch rule anymore, potentially. So if that becomes the case, we really need to be mindful of what our harvest habits are as recreational guys, because it's going to be on us to work together to release over 50 and allow the population to continue to be healthy.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. And the other thing you mentioned, that the recreational guys take a bigger dent. I had a hard time getting that through my thick skull.
Right.
I did, but I can tell you with some degree of accuracy, with a great degree of accuracy, what the total commercial harvest was from striped bass in the state of Maryland last year.
Mm.
Because those fish are reported. Those fish, there's a definite hard number to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they have to report.
Right. Can you tell me how many pounds of rockfish were caught recreationally in the state of Virginia last year?
No clue.
No
No
clue.
clue. Yep.
And when it comes to regulation, it's a lot of speculation. I've been at that table. It's not good discussions, and it's a lot of speculation. It's hard. It's hard.
It's ultimately, and this is what I learned from Shanna Madsen, who's the deputy chief director from VMRC. It's ultimately a lack of money. According to her guesstimations, the science is there and available to be applied. There's just no money to employ the folks to go do it. Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm just curious, what's the deficit? And she said it was like $3 million. So, if somebody listening, wants to set the record straight for the future, hey, you know what? Write the VMRC a check for $3 million, and let's get these scientists fired up to actually go do the research. But meanwhile, it's like science and guesstimations are over here in future land. But what we have in front of us is what we can control, which is I myself, when I go fishing in 2025 for cobias, if I need to harvest, just harvest a couple of 44 inchers. If I don't, let them all go and make sure that they're revived, healthily.
Yep.
And that's something we can each individually do. And plus, not to mention, I think we can all agree that a 43, 44 inch cobia cleans easier and eats better than your 56, 57 inchers.
I don't know. They're all good, Luke. They're all good. They're all good.
I don't know. I did enjoy a rockfish dinner last night. It was my first rockfish of the season. I was so stoked about it. It was a really nice, thick 23.5 incher, and took me 4 hours to find one, and finally found one. I was grateful for it. So you talking about these 40 fish day just hurts my soul.
It took us, we put the boat over, and it took us 4 minutes?
Yeah.
And maybe 4 minutes.
Well, there's a reason that I work in the IT industry and you're a professional fisherman, because you guys have it dialed in. And speaking of, so you were talking about using birds to find them and then also working some lures off the bottom. When you were you in different bodies of water working them off the bottom versus tracking birds, or was it the same body of water in terms of like depth and temperature?
Same body of water. We probably didn't go out of a 10 square mile area today.
Oh, no, not at all.
Not at all. It was a relatively small body of water, and just different scenarios in it. We fished a duck blind structure on poles in 4 feet of water, and just off of that it dropped down to 15, and there was some fish kind of schooled up there. It's a lot of rockfish in the Choptank River. Yeah, always is. And we're thankful for that. And and one of the things that both you and I share, and Alan, in this whole fishery and it came to light tonight as we were talking with Captain Wingate. He is an Upper Bay fisherman. He fishes, the Choptank River in North. They don't have the options that we have. They don't have the option to go, and chase red drum on a daily basis. They had they've caught some up there, and it's more and more every year. And they have limited availability to cobia.
Mm-hmm.
We're blessed with tremendous opportunity for the speckled trout and the cobias and the sheep's head and the tautogs, and we caught keeper sea bass in the bay this year for the first time, or at least I did. And we have gray trout, and we have the bottom fishery. So we have options, and so especially when it comes to talking about what we're going to do with the striped bass situation, it greatly affects a lot of those people up in the Upper Bay, where they don't have the they don't have the availability or the opportunity rather to chase a variety of fish like we do. So we're very blessed in that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like a geographical privilege, if you will, which again is why it's so important for us to respect that fishery, so that those fish do have a chance to continue to thrive and make it up north. And I'm curious about the striped bass in Maryland. Same rules with the inline circle hooks, correct?
Yeah, with
Okay.
live bait, if you're live bait, you can't use. You've got to use circle hooks.
Okay, so specific to live bait.
It is specific to live bait. What we're just using your normal lead-headed jig today, and that's what we were doing. Well, one of the things that happens also with using artificial bait is those fish are hooked, and very few of them are hooked deep.
Right, right.
Does it happen? Yes.
Yeah.
Once in a while, you get one down in the gullet or in the gills. That happens, but most of them are hooked in the face and back.
Well, you're in control with the lure with your rod.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to feel that bite. When you feel that bite, you're going to
Swing.
So it's in the jaw most of the time.
It's in the jaw, and there might be eye damage on occasion, but mortality rate for
yours or the fish.
Whose mortality rate? Mine or the fish?
That's great. Well, so here's a question for you. So, I saw some fish in lights, right? And they weren't interested in what I had to throw. And so the fish that I finally landed was in complete darkness in deeper water and happened to be switching over to a 1/2 ounce jig from my 1/8 ounce jig that I've been throwing. So when it comes to like a pro tip for, us recreational guys that are maybe throwing at structure, docks or whatever, what would you say is the type of, lure behavior that is going to most likely incite a bite from a rockfish?
If you're fishing shallow water structure, docks and things like that, and most of them are going to be in less than 4 feet of water.
Okay.
One of the things and Alan did this today. What is that? A Shad Rap 10? X-Rap 10?
Yeah, X-Rap 10.
Yeah. They're hard to beat. It's a shallow diving lure. I like to switch out the trebles for single hooks because not only, I don't know if it's any easier on the fish, but it's a whole lot easier on me.
Yeah.
1 hook out versus 9.
Or in the net.
In the net. Yeah, you know the deal. So that the Shad Rap's always a good one. That shallow diver there's a good one. And the 1/4 ounce jig head, I think there's a place for it. In real shallow water, I tend to go with a 3/8 or a 1/2 because most of my bites, specifically on channel edges, are along the bottom.
Okay.
And
you've got current moving, so you want to get it down there.
Yeah. Okay.
And the other thing why I like those two models, those two weights, is because if we're able to find these fish under birds, and those rockfish are on top of the water, they're in the top of the water column.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to use a lighter jig to stay in the top. I get that, but
right.
Positioning the boat is paramount, and it's key to being able to catch these rockfish for a prolonged amount of time. Any fool can run in there, throw it one time and catch a rockfish and be happy. But, if you want to make it last a little bit, positioning your boat, on the side of the school, and coming up to it quietly. When I say quietly, that means the engine off, the trolling motor off, not dropping anything in the floor, not slamming the doors. So a stealthy approach to this thing, and being able to, to know where the tide is and know where the wind is and know what your boat position is going to be. So you can parallel these fish. And instead of catching, it's like the old bull and, looking in the young bull thing. You can, instead of catching one, you can catch 5, 6, 7, 8 out of this school, before ultimately you lose them. What we have found is that we have a lot of, we'll call them friends up here. And you have the same thing down there when you're cobia fishing. You're working a pot of fish, and here comes, CL Marshall and the old green mako, with the bow up and throwing the big weight and stops real close to you, and then that's over. But so we made the joke today, and hey, we're gonna find our own fish, and fortunately we were able to do that. But just the quiet, stealthy approach, and what I was getting to with a lure weight is you can cast it farther, Luke. You don't have to be right up on top of the school in order to cast into the school of fish. And if you don't get hit right away, it's going to fall. And traditionally, the bigger fish are underneath. So, you win that way too. but you can throw that half ounce, you can throw that 3/8 ounce bait a lot further than you can throw the 1/4 ounce jig head.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, it's getting me fired up wanting to come up there. I'm gonna have to carve out some time soon and come pay y'all a visit to see what this madness is all about.
Well, it's not like you haven't been invited.
True. The onus is 100% on me. So I think I'm gonna have to come do that before the season runs out, and then in trade, you guys will have to come down and suffer a day of cobia fishing with me in summer of 25.
That's the only part of the trade. You know what the other part of the trade is? That Scottish salmon.
I kid you not. One of our sponsors is Sam Russ Seafood, and I actually paid them a visit today just to get a fresh big slab of that Scottish salmon. So
one of my favorite sandwiches of all time, and I go to Mallard's on the Wharf down in Hancock quite a bit. Johnny Moe is a good friend of mine. Plays music for me all the time, and I go there, and he's that Scottish salmon on a Scottish salmon BLT. It is. Oh,
yeah, that's hard to beat.
And I ordered. I want double salmon on that thing.
Got all your good omega-3s. I mean, it's like the Orange Crushes. It's just getting vitamin C. It's good. It's good for you.
Speaking of Orange Crushes, I'm proud to say that my youngest son, Captain Parker Marshall, is now engaged. He's going to be a married man. Yeah, that's going to happen, and I will just say he's got a good line on Orange Crushes with his new family.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Glad to hear that. Well, folks that are listening that want to come up and visit Seahawk Sports Center to see you, Captain Allen, or get up with you to book a trip, remind us where Seahawk Sports Center is, Captain Allen.
It's Pocomoke, Maryland, 1 mile north of the Virginia line.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, Allen's charter service is Real Faith Charters. Real Faith Fishing Charters. And I tell you, this is a fishing charter. I had a lot of faith in him today, that's for sure. I just got in the truck, and man, we had a ball.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And for those that want to get up with you and get aboard Tangier Sound Charters, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, come on, man. You can catch me at my phone. If I don't answer, leave a message or send a text at 410-251-7341. Or I have a Facebook page. It's Tangier Sound Charters there. Message me and I'll get back to you in a timely manner.
Fantastic. Well, guys, appreciate the report very much. Thanks for pulling off to the side so we can have a safe report. Y'all drive safe, and we look forward to talking to you real soon.
You know what I look forward to, Luke?
What's that?
Going to catch them redfish again tomorrow.
I heard that. Well, y'all stick around for a word from our sponsors that make this great conversations free for us each week, and we'll be right back with you here soon for the What Did You Learn segment. Pure Flat slick lures are tried, true, and guide approved. Slick lures catch big speckled trout, redfish, flounder, and more. You can cast them a mile, and they produce a highly erratic bait fish imitation with a twitching retrieve. The tournament-winning slick has helped many anglers set personal best records. Whether you're fishing the OG slick, the smaller profile slick junior, or the versatile little slick, one is sure to find that unforgettable thump we're all after. Visit your local tackle retailer or pureflats.com for your favorite color and rigging combination. Go sling some slicks today. You can't catch them on the sofa. Do you want to make a difference in your waterways? Toadfish is the only brand that cleans coastal waters with every purchase. Having already planted almost 300,000 square feet of oyster habitat, Toadfish is leading the charge in conservation with thoughtfully designed, eco-friendly products in a mission to protect the waters that we call home. Visit gdo.deals/toadfish, and 15% off will be applied to your cart at checkout. Toadfish. Let's put them back. Welcome to the What Did You Learn segment. So it's interesting going back to Captain Robbie Bryan talking about some of the wreck fishing and just the way that, he builds his leaders and whatnot. I would have never thought that I could go that heavy, especially for sea bass, because in my mind, thinking about 80 or 100 pound, material, I'm thinking about much larger fish than the sea bass, but considering that they're not super leader shy, and that you want to be able to, hopefully pull something out of a wreck or come across something sharp down there and not lose your entire rig. Definitely a good takeaway is to know that, it's probably better to use that, 80, 100 pound material all the way down there so that you're able to, get those fish out of those wrecks or at least avoid a couple of break offs. So definitely a lesson learned there that I'll apply the next time I get the chance to get out there and fish those wrecks. It was also cool to hear about that angel shark. Definitely take a moment and Google search that. That's a really cool looking animal. Would have loved to see that up close and personal. And then talking with, Captain Austin Hain, it's always a treat. He kind of brings that refreshing, brutal honesty. When it doesn't go to plan. And for those who don't know Captain Austin, I mean, he is an incredibly talented fisherman and guide, and he's been doing it for years. So if someone's going to go out there and find and locate some fish and catch them, he's going to do it. So hearing that it didn't go to plan, just kind of is an indication that they're probably just not there yet. And so I'd say the lesson I learned there is just to, sometimes you got to know when to go home and get some rest as opposed to, beat yourself up, casting and casting when it's just not going to happen. And then finally, talking to Captain CL and then speaking of striper fishing and kind of putting the picture together, Captain CL's up there a little bit further north and there's striper everywhere. So, it's just kind of cool to see that tale of two cities, so to speak, that, down here it's just not happening yet, but up there it is. So I think the lesson I learned there is that I probably need to go ahead and pack it up and drive up the Eastern Shore and go see Cap Marshall here soon to get a feel for what this incredible striper bite is a little bit further up the bay into those Maryland waters and rivers and tributaries. So definitely excited to hear about that. I don't know about you guys, but I'm hoping that this little bit of a cooler temperature change that's happening this week is going to help to, cool these local river waters down, cool the bay water down, hopefully induce a little bit more activity with the speckled trout inshore, some of the striped bass here in the bay waters, and then fingers crossed. I know a lot of us are anticipating and excited for the hopeful bluefin tuna run that should be happening here in the next couple of weeks. If you were around last year, you know that they were literally within a couple of miles of the beaches here off of the Chesapeake Bay. So let's just say a prayer that the good Lord blesses us with the type of conditions we had last year, some calm days, because it really is a treat to be able to go out there within reach and target those giant bluefin tuna. So guys, I hope y'all have a great week. Can get out there. It's going to be Thanksgiving, so we're going to take some time next week and hear from a very special new sponsor of ours. Y'all stay tuned for that next week. We'll be back with you with some reports the week after, and we wish you all a very, very happy Thanksgiving. Did you know every 40 seconds, someone has a heart attack or stroke? In that moment, every second counts and every critical decision matters. Air Medcare Network's air ambulance providers can provide life-saving care directly to those in need at a moment's notice. With 320 locations across 38 states, they're the largest air ambulance membership network. Rest assured, they've got you and your entire household covered. Membership is just $99 a year or just $79 for seniors. Visit gdo.deals/airmedcare to enroll. So that's going to wrap it up this week. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, to get your free AFTCO Camo Sunglasses Cleaning Cloth, just text the acronym LCBFR to 779-345-2918 to get your promo code and be added to our email list so we can send you the new show each week. You guys keep whacking them and be safe out there.